Hey y'all, welcome back to the Not Lost on Us podcast. I am so excited for today's episode. I've got my iced coffee, my Bible, and a whole lot of excitement coming to you guys today. I don't know if you've seen my Instagram stories or if you've seen just some posts that I've made recently, but I've been through a pretty long process of figuring out what I want to do next year when it comes to the school semester and just figuring out what I want to do for the rest of my life. I graduate in May. I'm literally, a month away from tomorrow. This podcast is being recorded on a Wednesday, April 3rd. It'll be released today, but a month from tomorrow, I'll be walking across the stage at my commencement ceremony, and I'm so excited about that. But I feel like a lot of seniors and even undergraduates have the question of, what do I do next? If you're anything like me, then maybe you changed your major 5 times like I did, and we're going to get into that a little bit later in the episode. Or maybe you have exactly the idea of where you see yourself after you graduate college and your undergraduate years, and you know exactly where you're going. If that's graduate school, a doctoral program, if that's going straight to the workforce, or maybe college wasn't for you and maybe you did a trade school as soon as you got out of high school. Maybe you had an awesome job opportunity lined up, so that was never something that you had to worry about, but you're wondering if this is the path that you're supposed to take. I can 110% guarantee you all, because of what the Lord has done in my life, I know that He will not let anything slip by you that is supposed to be for you. I'm going to do a lot of flipping in my Bible today, so if you can hear some pages turning, just know what that is. I've got some words out of Mark that I just want to talk to you all about, but beforehand, I just want to share a little bit of my story. Like I said, I'm graduating in a month. I'm so excited about that. But what about 4 years ago from now when I was a freshman coming into college? I always knew that I wanted to go to college, but I was actually not coming to the college that I'm at. I was actually going to go to the University of Alabama. I had a full scholarship from winning a pageant, but our lovely friend COVID-19 came around. And that was something that, I didn't know what my freshman year was going to look like because of that. And the University of Alabama is like 8 hours away from my house. And while I've never been afraid to just get up and go somewhere, it was like, okay, is this really going to be beneficial to me? Am I going to be stuck in my dorm room the whole time that I'm there? What's going to happen? So ultimately, I chose to come to the college that was a little over an hour away from my hometown. And at first I thought that I would regret it. I was like, oh no, did I make the wrong choice? And after being here for the first month, I realized that I did not make the wrong choice. I went through a lot my freshman year. I'm going to have my mom on the podcast in a couple weeks, and we're just going to talk about just some big life changes that we've been through and the way that God has just been ever so faithful and provided. But with that to come, my dad passed away my first month into my freshman year of college, which was absolutely crazy. It was like he was fine whenever I left to go to school. I will share more on the whole story in a couple episodes from now. But it was just like my world was rocked. It was like, oh, well, what's next, Lord? I don't know what to do. And I come home from school, I'm, being driven, I'm crying, and I see my grandfather, he's crying. I've never seen this man cry before. And I'm like, was I supposed to go to school? And I'm like, this was my dad's school. He was an alum of ETSU where I'm at now. And I'm just like, do I continue school? What is my next step? And I really, really fought the battle of, am I supposed to be here? Am I where I'm supposed to be at? And do I need to continue this path? I did end up coming back in the spring semester. I actually finished out the fall semester not terrible to have a parent pass away. I had all A's and I failed chemistry for the first time. We're going to get into that a little bit later in the episode. But I'd always been an honor student. I was pretty much straight A's besides some math classes that I had in high school. But my high school was never something that, I really had to try at. It was like I showed up, I did my work, I did my homework, I was a great student. But now with everything being online, it was like, oh, I have the option to not do this, or, I've never met my professor. So it was easier for me to just, not do my work. And it was easier for me to get sucked in other places such as clubs, organizations, friendships, hanging out with people. And I was also in a relationship at the time, so it was like, oh, well, I can put more here and I can put school on the back burner. And that was totally not good advice. So please do not take that as the advice of this episode. But just know that, like, it's real and it happens. And, like, if you're in that stage right now, like, I promise it will be okay. Snap out of it. Tell yourself, like, okay, the Lord has good plans for me. I do not need to hinder it because this education is a gift. This education is not something that everyone can get. This education is something that was set before me in my path that He has written for me. So I probably should take this seriously. So let's move on into spring semester. When I come back to school, I had to retake that chemistry class, failed it again. Just gonna be so real with you guys. I was also in Chem 2 at the time. I passed Chem 2 with flying colors, but literally I think I had like an A and a B plus like in Chem and Chem 2 and Chem Lab. Literally could not pass chemistry 1 to save my life. And I can look back and laugh at it now, but during the time I was like, okay, Lord, like, I want to be a doctor, you know this, but, like, I have to get my prerequisite of chemistry out of the way. And at the rate I'm going, I'm like, I am not doing it. So I just kept telling myself, like, push through, push through, push through. So fall semester of my sophomore year comes around, and I'm like, okay, you know what? Let's retake it the third time. If I don't pass it, then I'm just going to take the L on it, and we're going to move on. So while I'm enrolled in Chem 1, I'm also enrolled in organic chemistry. If you know anything about organic chemistry, and if you know anything about me, the two do not mix. Just chemistry in general, not for me. And if anyone's out there and y'all are struggling with a college class, like, you are not alone. And there's so many resources that you can go to. I know my school offers like a free tutoring center. They offer an academic achievement center, like so many resources. Reach out. You are not less than because you have to reach out and get help. Literally, the Bible tells us like to seek wise counsel. Even if it is talking about biblical things, like He's talking about our education too, because if it's something that He has placed on our hearts and our minds to do and to pursue a career, we should be seeking wise counsel from the start to help us succeed in those areas and aid in the process. Sophomore year Taylor did not do that, however, so I ended up taking an L on Chem again, and we're not even going to talk about my OChem grade. I ended up with a D, and I think she just passed me because she probably felt bad for me. I'm just going to be so real. She was like, I do not want to have this girl in my class again, whatever. But sophomore year was really, really difficult. I didn't understand how hard it would be to come back in the fall semester a year after my dad had passed. Even though I wasn't super close with my dad, it was just like all of the memories and all of the places I would walk by the day that, my dad passed where I was. It was like, oh, like this is reality. And it's like, I'm not trying to throw myself a pity party because literally we're not supposed to throw ourselves pity parties, but I was sitting in that moment and I'm like, what do I do, Lord? And I still had this passion. I thought that I wanted to be a doctor, and I was like, okay, this time I need to get clinical hours because that's not something that I've obtained yet. And I applied to get some clinical hours at the Children's Hospital in my college town. I ended up getting the job, which was super exciting, and I really did love every second of it looking back. I did work nights, so it was a little difficult some days, especially, waking up, going to school if I had school the next day, but then, I would get to sleep the rest of the day, which was nice. I also got paid for it, which was awesome. I absolutely loved that part because it counted as clinical hours as well as I got a check. I was employed by them, and it was really helpful, especially for my resume later on as we're going to talk about job placements and just my whole interview process with the career that I get to pursue now. But I still had this passion to be a doctor, and I knew that it was hard and I just wasn't doing well in my classes, and I'm like, God, like, am I supposed to do this? Like, is this something that I'm supposed to do? Or is this something that I just told myself that I want to do? And I really, really question, like, what's next, Lord? Like, if I can't pass these classes, like, there's no way I can get into med school. There's no way that I'm going to be able to succeed and be a good doctor. All of my friends are making, like, great grades, and I'm like, I'm struggling. So spring semester of my sophomore year comes around, and it was so much better. It was an easier course load for me, and I ended up falling in love with, like, microbiology, and I just had great professors. And it was finally the first semester that I was all in person, besides just a couple online classes that were already online before the pandemic. But it was just a whirlwind of a change, and I was building community. I got plugged into a freshman small group, which I was a sophomore, but that year they did allow the sophomore students who did not get a normal freshman year to come and join those small groups. And I'm forever thankful for that, because my leader that I had has impacted my life for the rest of my life. She's currently in optometry school, and she is seriously one of the biggest role models that I have, even though I don't talk to her every single day like I used to, or every single week. She is just a true sister in Christ, and she really laid the foundation of what hard work looks like and what truly seeking after the kingdom is, especially in college. Because in college, like I said in the beginning of this podcast, we get sucked in so many different directions, but really the one direction that we need to stay on in the path is the narrow one, the one that's narrow, the one that might feel lonely, but the one at the end of the day is going to lead us to glory, and it is going to outweigh any single thing that we could ever get on this earth. So I have a huge appreciation for Emily. I don't know if she'll ever hear this, but she seriously helped shape me and help me make really hard decisions that are going to come later on as I get into those. So I ended up my sophomore year, and I still wanted to be a doctor, so I thought. And I just remember, looking back in journal entries that I wrote, or just sitting and praying, and I just remember my heart feeling so torn, because I was like, okay, I don't know if I actually want to do this. And I'm like, I think that I do, but I don't know if this is the right route. I don't know if this is the right specialty. And I remember I toyed with it for a really long time. I prayed about it a lot. And I remember going into my junior year, I was still pre-med. And I just went on my first mission trip to Honduras that summer. It was the July before August that school started. And on that mission trip, I made a lot of really, really big decisions that would affect my junior year, my senior year, and friendships that I had. It was to not be in a organization that I had previously been in. And for me, it wasn't because of the organization. It was just because I was putting my worth in that organization. And on that mission trip, it just made me see that these people that I'm serving don't have near as much of extras and luxuries that I have, yet they are so on fire for God and His passion for their life. And if God has called them to go serve their family for the rest of their lives, they are going to do it diligently, and they are going to serve. If it is to go out and herd cattle, they are going to do it with their whole heart. And it wasn't until the day that I was sitting and serving in a medical setting with one of my best friends, Lydia. We were taking people's blood pressures, and I do not know Spanish at all. This literally brings tears to my eyes talking about this. But there's a little boy that came in, and I had taken an ASL class my sophomore year of college. And this boy comes in, and he's little, and his mom is with him, and they wouldn't speak. And I'm like, hey, I don't know Spanish. I'm trying to say hola, ¿cómo estás? And my Spanish is super rusty. You can ask Lydia. I'll have her on the podcast soon, and we can just talk about just little things like that. But I remember this little boy signing hello to me. And while I didn't know all of the sign language I should have known from taking a class, I knew enough to carry on a conversation with him and tell him my name. And the little boy was deaf, and it has stuck with me literally ever since. And literally it just kind of hit me in this moment that the Lord had foreshadowed that on my life. Like, hey, this is something that I can see you doing. And it's just kind of like a realization that's hitting me right now. The Lord is so good. But I remember just signing to that little boy and just saying, hello, the bare minimum, how are you? My name's Taylor. I'm going to take your blood pressure. And while I was having to fingerspell a lot, he was getting it. And I'm like, oh my goodness, this is so cool. And all I could say was thank you, God, for getting me through this, because A, there was no way I should have known that much sign. And B, it's just so beautiful how He puts these little seeds in little different areas to kind of foreshadow what's to come. So if you all know me, you know I'm pretty stubborn, and you know that whenever I started school back in the fall semester of my junior year after that mission trip, I just was not doing well in my physics classes. I was really struggling in my physics lab class, and it was just really difficult for me. because I was like, I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing. I said, Lord, like, I cannot do this. I'm not understanding this. And I ended up starting to get physics. I was like, okay, I can actually do this if I apply myself. But I knew that it would take a lot of application for me to understand. I also knew that I had organic chemistry too that I had to take. And I'm just like, Lord, I really don't know if I can do this. So I sat back for probably a month into my junior year fall semester, and I was just like, I can't do this anymore. And I said, what am I good at? So I started evaluating what things and qualities that I thought that the Lord had blessed me with. I looked at my public speaking skills. I looked at how I wasn't afraid to stand in front of people and speak. And I looked at how I was very strong-willed, and sometimes it does get the best of me, but most times it's a good thing. So I said, oh, law school. I'm going to go to law school. I'm going to be a lawyer, and that's what I want to do. So of course, if you know me, you know I dive right in. So I ended up changing my major. I am actually going to be graduating with a degree in political science in May. And I was like, I'm all in. Let's do this thing. I'm so ready. Let's do it. And in January, I got an internship at a law firm. Now this is January 2023, and it is my spring semester of junior year. Things were looking up. I was passing my classes with flying colors. I was like, this is so easy. And I ended up hating being at my internship. I just did not feel fulfilled. I felt like I was not being of aid to anyone. For me personally, I cannot be somewhere sitting at a desk from 8 to 5, making phone calls, meeting with families, and it was just really heavy. And I was like, I don't know if I can do this. I said, I don't know if I want to do this. And I really struggled that entire summer after that spring semester of, is this what I want to do for the rest of my life? Because I knew that I had to take the LSAT coming up. I knew that, I have to figure out what I want to do. I have 1 year of undergraduate school left. So it's kind of like, hey, Lord, I really need some help down here. But he was helping me all along. I was just too stubborn to see that. So fall semester of my senior year comes around. And I just remember a week before school starts, I was like, I do not want to be a lawyer. I was like, I cannot do this for the rest of my life. I was like, I literally would rather do anything than go to law school and take the LSAT and go back to my internship, because it was the last thing that I wanted to do. And if law's for you, that is amazing. If things that are not for me are for you, I will cheer you on every step of the way, because we all have these specific paths and these specific plans that the Lord has written out for our lives, which I think is so beautiful, because we can try to change our end goal as much as we want to, and we can try to put these pressures on us of is this what I'm supposed to do, is this right, Lord, is this where I'm supposed to go? And we try to get the internship, or we try to get the job, or we change our major. And I feel like he's sitting up there with his arms crossed, just kind of looking side to side, she'll figure it out one day. So I had a meeting with my advisor, and I just kind of told him, I was like, look, I don't know what I want to do, but I want to help people. I said, I have always wanted to be a doctor ever since I was little, but I really don't think I can do that. Plus, I don't want to be an undergrad for another 3 years, taking all of these classes. And looking back on that now, that's so selfish of me, because if that's what the Lord had wanted me to do, I should have just, taken it open arms. But thankfully, he did have a plan for me, and it ended up working out in the most beautiful way. But I met with my advisor, and he was like, hey, I really want to put you in touch with the advisor over speech language pathology. I think that you might really like this. So I got in touch with the lady over speech language pathology, and she is over rehabilitation sciences at my school. And we started talking, and she was like, hey, you know what? I am just have this feeling to tell you about our audiology program. She was very hesitant at first, because she was like, I never normally tell people about this. I call it the hidden gem of our school, but the cohort is very small, so it's very competitive, but I really think that you'll be a shoo-in. I think that you can get it. And those were her exact words. So I was like, oh, awesome. Tell me more. As she's talking to me, I just feel this sense of peace come over me. And while I knew that it was going to be hard, because I had to pick up a minor and finish it in 2 semesters, which I will be graduating with a minor in communicative disorders in May, I knew that it was going to be worth it. And I knew from the very start, with lots of prayer and just lots of full redirection of like, okay, God, I don't know what I'm doing. You know that I have absolutely no idea, but if this is from you, like I need a clear yes. So if I said that I clung to the word every single day in the fall semester of my senior year, I would be lying to you. While I did lead a small group that I absolutely adore with the most amazing co-lead, there were some days in the fall semester where I felt like I was 10 feet underwater and I was not coming up. I really got serious about wanting to pursue a degree in audiology and a career and just wanting to make a difference. And I was just like trying to check all of these boxes, and I let this overwhelming sense of what the world thinks about me encapsulate who I was. And that was so far from the truth, because this world's opinion about me or about things I say or about things I do, so insignificant in comparison to what the Father thinks, because He is the only person that I should ever be pleasing. Fall semester of senior year was difficult, but I'm not saying that it was hard, because I've been through way harder things, but just mentally it was hard, knowing that I was going through a lot of my last and knowing that I really had no idea where I was going to end up or what school I wanted to apply to for audiology. Also, filling out an application is one of the most intimidating things when you have to get letters of recommendation from like 3 to 5 individuals, and you have to fill out these papers, write a personal statement, and it's a lot of work that people don't really talk about. People talk about how difficult the schooling is, and they'll say, oh, well, if you're going to be a doctor, it's going to be really hard school. But it's like, okay, like if I can get through that, like what about having to ask these people to, meet these deadlines for me, or while I'm teaching myself and while I'm in school and while I'm a part of clubs and organizations, it's like, where do I find the time to do this? I want to pause right here and go ahead and tell you that time is not something that we need to be taking for granted. I want to go and refer back to the Gospel of Mark, and Mark 1-3. If you have time to read it, please sit down and read it, because it absolutely changed my mind, changed my perception on waiting and on the waiting process. I'm going to fast forward just a little bit, because in December of 2023, I finally was like, okay, let's do this. I go to submit my application and I was eager to do it. I was like, okay, let's do it. But I couldn't. I was like, I have to change up some of my personal statements. I was like, I just don't feel like I'm getting who I am across to these people. So I had to wait. I had to wait just a little bit longer, and I ended up actually submitting my audiology application through the SIDCAS program 2 days before that it was due. My transcripts from some community colleges that I went to in high school, where I was dual enrolled, did not go through. So it was a crazy week that week, and it was just with a ton of prayer. I was calling everyone that I knew. I was like, please pray that these transcripts get sent through, because this is actually something that I want to do. I finally, got a passion for something, and it just hit me that like we are being labored for by Jesus. And even in the busy times, like in Mark 1, like Jesus got up and prayed, and He was way busier than I am. So like, what's stopping me from praying? Because I was turning my prayers like into worries instead of just speaking to the Lord and telling Him exactly where my heart was. And I just remember like the feeling of relief whenever I finally sat down and I was like, Lord, I need you. I need you to come through. I was like, I know you will, but I'm like, okay, like I really, really, really need your help here. Not even 30 seconds later, y'all, am I kidding you? I get an email that I have my transcript, SIDCAS got it, and my application was approved. And at this time, we're a day before the application is due. The application was due on February 1st. I was leaving to go to the Bahamas on February 2nd. So as you can tell, I was very flustered. I was like, this is the most stressed I think I have ever been. And I'm just like, Lord, is this really like from you? Like, why do I feel, so stressed? And I was feeling stressed because I wasn't going to Him with my issues, and I was trying to solve all of it in my own hands. It was after that Not Lost on Us started. Not Lost on Us also started February 1st. So I had a lot going on that week. And I just knew, I was like, okay, Lord, like I'm fully diving in. I'm fully, doing this thing. I was like, you are so much better than any acceptance. You are so much better than any friendship. You are so much better than any people group that I'm trying to please. You are so much better than any trip. And I said, Lord, even with this podcast coming, like, if I can help one person, and that one person is myself, by getting on here and speaking about things that are important to me or things that you have done in my life, I am so blessed to do so, and I will continue to do so to further your kingdom. I'd also told him that, Lord, if you allow me to get into audiology school, I said, I will make sure that the nations hear your name. I said, I don't know how. I said, and I don't know when, but I said, if you give me the opportunity, I said, I will say yes. So if you don't already know, or if you can't tell, I was very confident. I was like, I'm confident in what the Lord is going to do in my life. I was like, I feel like this is a calling that was placed on my life. I had so many people praying for me, y'all. Like, this past week when I did get the acceptance for audiology school, like the amount of emails, texts, and calls that I made, it brought so much joy to me, because I was like, like this is what it's going to be like to sit and worship with like-minded people. Just the joys and the prayers being answered and the tears being cried, like, are all so worth it. I want to take a little break and just read some scripture out of Mark 2. I'm going to read verses, I guess, 8 through 11, and this is just the story of Jesus healing a paralytic, and it talks about how, like, when Jesus saw their faith, like, this is what he does. And it says, and immediately Jesus, perceiving in his spirit that they thus questioned within themselves, said to them, why do you question these things in your hearts? Which is easier to say to the paralytic, your sins are forgiven, or to say, rise and take up your bed and walk? But that you may know that the Son of Man has authority on earth to forgive sins. He said to the paralytic, I say to you, rise, pick up your bed and go home. And he rose and immediately picked up his bed and went out before them all, so that they were all amazed and glorified God, saying, we never saw anything like that. Jesus just shows us what it's like to take and lead, and he shows us to lead with authority. And I feel like when it comes to leading with authority, we have to think with authority. We have to think with the power of him, because the Spirit of Jesus Christ lives within us. We cannot doubt. We cannot have any room for, oh, well, what's going to happen if this doesn't happen? Or am I going to be good enough? Because we literally have the creator of the universe living within us. And I think that we oftentimes forget that. For me, I did. I was really, really nervous going on that cruise, because I knew within the next couple of days I should be getting an email saying that I had secured a spot for an interview. I ended up getting back from the cruise after not having service for the whole weekend, and I had an email in my inbox with an offer to interview for ETSU's audiology program. I was overjoyed, to say the least, when I got that email. I sent it to all the people who were praying for me, who were just a part of my journey, and I just wanted to let them know, but I also wanted them to pray for me. I was seeking out prayer because I knew that I could not do this on my own, because I hadn't done this on my own so far. The Lord pulled through literally a day before the application was due. He pulled through whenever I, didn't have any service, and he let spots still be open for an interview slot that were good spots. And I was so, so, so grateful. I ended up selecting an interview time for the last week of February, and I wanted to interview closer to the end just so I did not have to wait as long for the committee's decision. And that was probably selfish on my part, but I was like, okay, I want to go towards the end. And it also gave me a little bit more time, because February was crazy busy for me, as well as I knew that the month of March would be. So I ended up interviewing on February 28th, I believe, and it was the most amazing interview. Y'all, I just got to share who I was with them, and we talked about if my past grades defined who I was, and I just got to share a little bit of who the Lord says I am. And I got to talk to the doctors who were interviewing me and just tell them, like, I'm not defined by what is on my transcript. I'm not defined by what is on my resume, because they had mentioned some things. They were like pretty impressed. And I was just like, wow, this is awesome. Like, the Lord has added all of this to me. Like, none of this has been on my own. This has been through many prayers, many tears, and lots of sleepless nights, because if it wasn't for him and it wasn't for my willing to let him work in my life, none of this would be possible. After my interview, I was on cloud 9. If y'all saw my video that I made, I documented kind of like the whole interview process. My country accent was so thick, and sometimes when I get excited, my accent will get a little bit thicker, and I could just tell it kind of makes me giggle, because I know like these certain things to look for. And I was just overjoyed at the interview. I had an audiologist who is currently one of my teachers for an introduction class for my undergraduate course sit and talk to me, and she prayed with me literally 2 days before my interview. And I'm just like, Lord, if you are not in this, like, I don't know who is. Like, I do not know how someone can sit back and tell me the Lord does not have a plan for my life when you have so readily availably made me so aware that you are in this. So the next part was the waiting game. And if you know anything about me, you know that I'm working on it. I was the most impatient person that you've ever met. I was told that I would know on Friday. I interviewed on a Monday, and I did not know Friday. I did not know until the following Monday. It was a week from when I interviewed. And I got the email at 10:30 at night. Right before I went to bed, I see an email come through, and I was like, I have to open it because the title was just Audiology Decision. And it was said that I was waitlisted. I had told myself before, if I am waitlisted, I'll be okay. Even in the video, you can see, after my interview, I was on cloud 9. I was like, oh, I'll be fine. And I broke down in tears. I literally did not know what to do. I was angry, I was upset, and I was not going to tell my family. I was like, I cannot let these people know this because they have spent so much time praying for me, and I just feel like I have let them down. And that's what went through my head, but that was the enemy working, and he was so happy that night that I was feeling the way that I was feeling. Jesus, however, was right by my side the whole time, and it wasn't until 2 a.m. that I texted my grandma. And if this says anything about my grandma, she will respond to me no matter what time it is. She got up out of bed, and she does not sleep with her cell phone in her room. They plug their phones up in the kitchen, and their kitchen is literally on the other end of the house. It cracks me up. But she got up, she said she heard her phone, and she walked to her kitchen, and she calls me. And I did not want to answer because I was a mess, snot running down my face. I had tears just coming out. I could not get words out. I was so upset. And the whole time she said, Taylor, the enemy wants you to feel this way. She said, the enemy wants you to think these negative things. The enemy wants you to think that you're not good enough, but God says that you're good enough. She recited scripture over me that night. I literally have tears in my eyes talking about this because I remember looking at my reflection in the bathroom, and I felt so broken and so worthless because the Lord was like, hey, put this on hold for a second. That when she started reciting scripture over me, it was like I was being washed new, and I did have purpose in this life. And the next couple of days, I was still very upset. I ended up telling she's the best mentor, big sister, Allie Anderson. I've talked about her many times on this podcast before, but we were going to go on a walk the very next day, and I was not going to tell her, but I cried so hard the night before that my eyes were so puffy. I literally looked like a wreck, and I ended up walking into our campus ministry house, and I just broke down, and she was like, do you need a hug? And all I could get out was, yes, and I'm not big on physical touch. So for me to say yes to that hug, she knew something was wrong. And we ended up going on an 1.5-hour walk and just talking. And Allie had told me just about a story of another awesome young lady who is now currently in med school, who I've looked up to for a really long time now. But she just told me her story, and it was just parts that I had already knew because I had talked to her before. But she was just reassuring me that just because I was waitlisted, if I do get in, I will be no less of a doctor of audiology than the ones who are in immediately. It was just because, there were 8 seats that they could give out, and maybe the 8 that they gave out originally had wanted to be audiologists from the time that they were 4 years old. And maybe this has been a lifelong dream of theirs, where mine was something that was recent, and while I'm still probably just as passionate about it as they are, it might have just been something more appealing to a selection committee. And that's the thing. It's a committee of people who were judging me on all of these things, and it wasn't a reflection of who I am. It was what they wanted for their program. And while I felt my interview was absolutely amazing, and while I felt like I was set for the job, the Lord said, hey, just give me a second and we're gonna work. that night after I got off the phone with my grandma, I did not know what to do. I could not sleep, and I opened my Bible. And whenever I'm in distress, I feel like I just open my Bible to a random verse, and I know that like I'm trusting the Lord to just like speak to me in a verse. But that night, y'all, he just spoke to me through the story of him cursing the fig tree in Mark 11. So I'm going to read this to you, and then I'm going to share what I journaled down. And it's literally like the most bone chilling thing, because looking back on it, it just talks about the lesson and the cleansing. And it's just like one of those things where it's like, okay, Lord, I still see you working in this. So in Mark 11, verse 12, and it's titled, Jesus Curses a Fig Tree. On the following day, when they came from Bethany, he was hungry, and seeing in the distance a fig tree and a leaf, he went to see it if he could find anything on it. When he came to it, he found nothing but leaves, for it was not the season for figs. And he said to it, "May no one ever eat fruit from you again." And his disciples heard. And they came to Jerusalem, and he entered the temple and began to drive out those who sold those who bought in the temple. And he overturned the tables of the money changers and the seats of those who sold pigeons. And he would not allow anyone to carry anything through the temple. And he was teaching them and saying to them, "Is it not written, 'My house shall be called a house of prayer for all the nations'? But you have made it a den of robbers." And the chief priests and the scribes heard it and were seeking a way to destroy him, for they feared him, because all of the crowd was astonished at his teaching. And when evening came, they went out of the city. The lesson from the withered fig tree. As they passed by in the morning, they saw the fig tree withered away to its roots. And Peter remembered and said to him, "Rabbi, look, the fig tree that you cursed has withered." And Jesus answered them, "Have faith in God. Truly I say to you, whoever says to this mountain, 'Be taken up and thrown into the sea,' and does not doubt in his heart, but believes that what he says will come to pass, it will be done for him. Therefore I tell you, whatever you ask in prayer, believe that you have received it, and it will be yours. And whenever you stand praying, forgive if you have anything against anyone, so that your Father also who is in heaven may forgive you your trespasses." That does not give y'all chills, then I don't know what will, because if you've never been told not yet, or if you've ever been told, hey, like, you are great, but there is someone that we think will be a better fit, Jesus literally has a whole lesson on a withered fig tree and doubt and what will come to pass. And I just want to read my notes on that I wrote that night, on the night of March 5th. I said, he cursed the tree and caused it to wither. But also, if you believe without a doubt that you will receive your prayers, you can move mountains if you believe. You read this for the first time on March 5th, 2024, after getting a waitlist email about audiology school. Have faith in God. He is patient and grants us time to change. He allows us time to bear fruit. He wants to see results in our actions. I knew that the Lord was waiting to see a result from my actions. I knew that he was waiting to see me apply biblical knowledge every single day. So I took the next month almost, and I sat and read and planned and journaled every single day, made time for it. And I said, Lord, not my will, but yours be done. Lord, this is something that I wanted, yes. And this is something that I was praying would happen on my time. And while I still feel like I'm there, while I'm ready to be accepted into this program, I know that you are sovereign and your plan is above all. Fast forward to a little less than a month later, I get an email and it said, "Hey, are you still interested in audiology? You're at the top of our wait list, and we might be able to start opening up offers to waitlisted applicants." I responded with the most enthusiastic yes, and I had my prayer group and my team that's standing behind me pray. I said, pray over this email, pray over this committee. And on April 1st, so on Monday of this week, I got an email and I was told that they were offering me a spot in the class of audiology students this upcoming fall. I'm seriously still overjoyed, and the Lord is just working in my life. And every day, like since then, I know it's only been a couple days, but I'll just sit and I'll just be like, Lord, like, you are so good. I'm just like, you showed me what it was like to sit and wait. And I've been seeing a lot of this, I guess it's the story that is going around on Facebook, and it talks about the 40 days, but day 41 is coming, and my day 41 came, and it was because I trusted in him, and it was because I prayed, and it was because I asked, and it was because I forgave those who I had things against, and it was because I sat in prayer, and I believed that I would receive it, that it would be mine, because I told the Lord, I said, God, I don't know how, but I said, I will make sure that the nations hear your name. I'll make sure that my community hears your name. I'll make sure that my friends hear your name. I will make sure that children hear your name, because with this career, you are giving me the opportunity to allow someone to hear your name for the first time if they have hearing issues. You are allowing me to let a child hear their mother speak, or hear their dad laugh, or hear their sibling talk. And through those things, we see you, because you are the one that puts breath in our lungs. I am so, so grateful for this opportunity, and I've already been researching things that I need to be doing this summer to prepare plans on the Bible app, to prepare my heart, and I'm eagerly awaiting the next 3 years of school, and for my 4th year of my externship, which is kind of like the residency program of medical school. Seeing how the Lord has prevailed in my life, and just seeing what he has done for me, I told him that I would tell everyone. I said, I will let him know that you have done this, because this is only something that could have come from you. And no man on this earth could ever pull enough strings, could ever put enough information on their resume, or could ever interview well enough to get an honor like this that you have given me through my story. God be glorified. Y'all, I hope that no matter what you're struggling with, if you're in a season of waiting, or if you are just praying that day 41 comes tomorrow, know that it's coming. Claim it, believe it, and pray for it, and talk to him about it, because he is always listening. I'm so excited to say that I will be a doctor in the future. So little me and freshman year Taylor, gosh, I wish I could just go back and give her a hug and tell her that everything would be okay. But I'm so grateful to y'all for letting me share my story, and I hope that each of y'all have a blessed week. And remember to go confidently in who you are, because of whose you are. I'll catch y'all next time.